Hello, I'm Susanne Turner, Curator at the Museum of Classical Archaeology, and this video is part of the Museum Remix Unheard project. And this is the grave stele of Hegeso. So, what's a grave stele? It's a tombstone, in this case of a woman in Athens who probably died around about the turn of the 4th century BCE. Ours is a plaster cast, a copy of the original. It's about 1.5 meters tall with 2 female figures. One of them is seated and bigger and has a name, Hegeso, daughter of Proxenos, carved above her head. The other is smaller and wears a simple long-sleeved dress. She has no name. I've chosen this object because this second figure is probably a slave. It makes sense to understand Hegeso as the recipient of this tombstone, and in fact all of the visual cues here are driving us, pushing us to do so. So she's bigger and she's beautifully attired and she has that name. But if we allow our eyes to simply slide over to Hegeso, then how are we able to do this unnamed slave girl justice? It is notoriously difficult to view the ancient world through enslaved eyes. Most of our sources are written by elite men for primarily elite male audiences, and no personal account of an enslaved person has survived. The enslaved are all but invisible in the archaeological record. I mean, we sometimes find things like the accessories of slave ownership, so collars with a slave owner's name on them, but none of this would let us hear an enslaved person speak except through the voices of that elite owning class. So what would Hegeso's slave say to us then, if we could hear her? Certainly different types of slave had wildly varying experiences in the ancient world. So those who were working outside in the fields would have had a difficult life with hard labour, but those who had it hardest were the ones who worked in the silver mines at LAURION. It was widely recognised that it was all but a death sentence to be sent there, and the labour was so backbreaking that many of them wouldn't survive for very long. In contrast, household maids, and I use that term knowing that it is a fallacy, can seem to have had it easy. So often they enjoy these warm relations with the other female figures on the grave stele, so much so in fact that actually it's often really hard to know whether you're looking at the figure of a younger sister, say, or a slave. Slaves weren't easily identified simply from the way that they looked, and definitely not from, say, the colour of their skin. But we might read all of this cosy intimacy as an illusion. These scenes on grave stele, they are projecting an image of familial harmony, and one that includes slaves. But commemorative monuments nearly always massage the truth, and we shouldn't let Hegesos make us think that the life of a slave in a well-to-do Athenian household was anything like life under the stairs somewhere like Downton Abbey. I mean, I suppose it might have been for some, but the grave stele don't show you the indifference, cruelty and violence that many household slaves must have experienced. And it will come probably as no surprise to hear that slaves were sexually available to their owners. And so being enslaved meant a loss of bodily autonomy and personhood. So if we look back again then at Hegeso and her companion, companion here is not the right word. Object might be better. Read alongside the other signifiers in the scene, she's just another marker of status and wealth, just like the originally painted jewellery that Hegeso picks from the box, or the elaborate and unique headdress that she's wearing on her head. So, you might want to think about, how can we give voice to an anonymous slave who died 2,500 years ago? And how might the story of an enslaved woman from classical Athens compare to that of a woman enslaved through the transatlantic slave trade, or indeed to one of those household servants from Downton Abbey. Or, of course, you might not want to think about any of that, because it's up to you. Happy remixing.